Celestial Revenant, the original sin. I remember when I made the Celestial Manifesto years ago and essentially suggested to nerf Celestial and Minstrel stats, and I even showed it to Grouch, but nothing really ever came from it. It's probably because it added more build diversity to the game in the long run, when you consider that perma-stealth Deadeyes, one-shot Willbenders, and such exist. Now, I don't really spend time promoting or suggesting balance changes anymore because I realize that that's a waste of time. It's just a futile effort. So what I instead do is I make fun playstyles that already exist that you can play right now. And so that's exactly what we're going to be doing right now, is showing you a fun Spear Renegade build for World vs. World roaming. Now, Spear is seeing a lot more play in PvE because it has ramping damage that scales up over time the more you're hitting, and this can be a little bit difficult to land in World vs. World where enemies are moving around so much or dodging. So what we're going to do to make that more viable in World vs. World is we're going to add a lot of CC combos so enemies cannot dodge your attacks or move out of the range. And so we're going to show the spear mechanics in a bit and the build and some skill combos and then some gameplay commentary. So let's just get straight into the build. I go for the Celestial stats, obviously, with the Rune of the Traveler. We don't get any swiftness on this build, so we need the movement speed. So any kind of rune that makes you move faster is going to be the way. Now for the Spear, I go for Celerity and Cleansing. And for the Mace Shield, I go for Hydromancy and Energy. Now normally you would want Energy Cleansing on the same weapon set because you're going to have like a defensive set and an offensive set. And while we do have Spear as the offensive set and the Mace is kind of more defensive because it has the shield, the reason why I've split these up is because when you're fighting like another tanky build, you generally want more condition cleanse than you want dodges. And when you're fighting a more bursty build, you generally want more dodges and blocks. So I put the dodges and blocks together, so when I'm fighting power builds, I'm going to swap to this set and then get those swap sigils to trigger from swapping legend stances. When I'm fighting a more tanky build, I need to optimize my damage with the ramping spear damage, and then I get my cleansing from swapping legend stance. I also have the Celerity sigil because my combo is going to revolve around a CC chain, so it helps me to get out my ramping damage faster, and yeah, it's just for enabling that combo. And then Hydromancy on the Mace because while I'm in melee range, it's nice to have some extra chill and damage burst, and chill is going to result in torment due to our traits, but we'll go over that in a sec here after we talk about the Relic of the Centaur. So Relic of the Centaur gives you stability whenever you use your healing skill, and this build's one of its counters is that it really dies to CC. You don't like to be CC'd on this build at all, and so the extra stability is really important. So the traits are going to be Salvation. Pretty much every Revenant runs this. It's just free sustain and a lot of it. Damage reduction, you're getting barrier and extra cleansing. Now in Corruption, we could also go for the top traits here for more damage if you really wanted just pure damage, because this build can kind of work in like group scenarios. This is just built for more solo roaming or small scale roaming where the extra sustain is needed. So if you wanted more damage and you've got a support with you, go for the extra damage. But we want the resistance here basically because it's going to give us more sustain. It's going to make us immune to blind, so those pesky thieves we can put on resistance before they go in stealth and blind us, and then we can hit them with our CC chain combos and essentially do a lot of damage to them. So this build isn't actually that bad against thieves. It's pretty good. And then in Renegade we get some extra regeneration and resolution whenever we dodge. That's always nice. Then we get protection from using the Kalla stance skills. You want to put them on top of yourself to get that extra protection. And then we have Lasting Legacy, which gives us longer Kalla's Fervor, which you gain from just hitting enemies and critting them. And that's going to give you extra condition damage and damage. and it's going to give you additional might when you use your F2. So when you use your F2 with full stacks of Callous Fervor, which is pretty easy to get, you're gonna get 15 might, and that's really important to the build because this is a celestial build and your damage is gonna come from that boon duration. Now the spear mechanics are that the auto attack has that dynamic melee and ranged attacking range that other spears have. You can use it in range if you're at range, depending on what your range is, and you can use it in melee. It's just going to give vulnerability and torment. It's kind of nice for some range pressure when you're not in melee range, but this is mostly a like medium range weapon, so all of your skills already kind of have range damage on them. So the 5 skill is your most important skill here. This is where you stack up your ramping damage. It's a ground targeted skill, and by the way, you can use all of these skills while moving in any direction. So it's a great kiting weapon, except for the 1 skill. You can't use that while not facing the target. But we're going to use that and gain stacks of Crushing Abyss. And that's going to increase the damage and the conditions applied when you use a skill. So the more it lands, the more damage it does. So after 1 stack, you're going to do 1 torment. After the second cast, you're going to give it like 3 torment, and then after that 5th one, we're going to give it 5 torment. And so that does a lot of damage. And then when you swap weapon, it will do an extra one on top of the of you instead of wherever you cast. So that can do 10 torment if you're just hitting 2 of those at max stacks. So that can do a lot of burst damage, and we want to CC enemies so that we can ensure that that happens. Now, we can also reduce the recharge of our Abyssal Rays, the Spear 5, by using any of the 2, 3, and 4 skills. So it's important that we use those, and they're kind of low energy cost, so that's pretty nice. But the 4 skill is going to be really clutch for our 5 skill because it's a CC that pulls enemies in. So always want to pull them in, and then use the 5 skill before it even finishes casting, because you know that it's going to pull them into the center. So you use the 4 skill, and this can be used obviously while kiting so that you can kind of hide the animation. You pull them in, and then you immediately 5 in the center of it because you know that it pulls them towards the center. So that is one way to ensure that you land your Abyssal Rays. And then the 3 skill is just an evade that creates these like virus looking things. And if it hits an enemy or an enemy walks into it, then it will give them chill, weakness, and slow. And since we have the trait that gives torment whenever we chill enemies, I didn't mention this earlier, but yeah, there's a lot of chill on this build, and that turns into torment. So that can do a little bit of damage, but it's mostly for the evade frame, which is a little bit of mobility, because this build is a little bit low on mobility. And then the 2 skill will reduce the recharge of your 5 skill by 10 seconds. So this reduces it the most. These just reduce it by 3. This does a little bit more if there's AoE. So we can get some decent reduction from the 4 skill by hitting multiple enemies. But really the 2 skill is the easiest one because it's 6-second cooldown, and you can throw it in the air and then it just comes down. It's not very counterplayable, so you're going to land it very reliably. So that's pretty much the... Oh, and it does chill, which can give you torment and burning. So the main combo that we want to be doing is going to revolve around our stances as well. So we've got the stances of Kalla and Mallyx, and they've buffed Kalla quite a while ago, but no one has really come up with a build since then that used it too much. So essentially how it works now is you use one of these stances, and then the next one will have an instant cast and have an enhanced effect. And that only works on the first 4 skills, not the elite skill. So if I want to use my heal skill, I'll use one, and then it's an instant cast here. You can see it had no animation, and that gives me stability because it's a heal skill. So I can get stability if I use another one and then I precast it. So it's pretty nice. But the enhanced effects are not too important. The resistance here is kind of good because that'll give me more sustain. And the chill here on enhanced Ice Razor's Ire and the extra torment on Razor's Claw Rage is just really, you got to decide which one you want. But like if you're in a situation where you're fighting someone who's got like a lot of sustain, then you probably want to go for Razor's Claw Rage. If you're going against something that's more squishy, Dark Razor's Daring so that you can CC them. But generally, we want to be using Ice Razor's Ire always, whether we enhance it or not, because what it does is it immobilizes the target, and this really helps us to land our damage. So that immobilize from range, as you can see, I don't get the protection on myself if I use that way, so you kind of want to like move into it as you're casting it, and that way you can get the protection. See, I didn't get it there because I casted at max range. So you generally want to be like, this is a medium range kind of build with 600 range skills, so you kind of want to be close to your target still. But yeah, use it and then get in range to get the protection, and when they're immobilized, then you want to do your combo. So the combo is immobilize them with Ice Razor's Ire, and then either use the enhanced Dark Razor's Daring to get the CC and sometimes resistance, or you can just use Razor's Claw Rage to get even more condition damage. I usually use Dark Razor's Daring, but you can use either one. So after you immobilize them, you want to immediately use the Spear 5 that you'll easily land when they're immobilized, and then while they're still immobilized, use the Abyssal Blot, and then that'll CC them again, allowing you to land another Spear 5, and then you're going to get quickness because you've just CC'd the enemy, right? So then we can instantly use the Spear 2, and that's going to reduce the recharge of our Spear 5, and then we can do Spear 5 again. So that's going to be 3 activations of the Abyssal Raise, and if the entire combo lands, we've got 3 Crushing Abyss stacks, and then we can go in with our weapon swap. So essentially the combo is going to look like this. We've got the Immobilize going out, Spear 5, 4, 5, 2, 5, and then we weapon swap, use the Mace 3 so that we can leap towards the target with that extra Abyssal Raise that we've created. And after applying all those conditions, we want to use the F2 because that'll give us a ton of might. And since we've got plenty of Callous Fervor, it's going to give us all that might. And the Mace 3 is going to give us even more might. And if we use the Mace 2 before the 3, it's a blasting of area might. So it's going to give you even more might. So when you use the might like that, it will retroactively increase your condition damage. So if you see here, I'm going to use, let's use Mace 3 here. And then you can see it's ticking for 438. I used the F2, now it's ticking for 584. So might will retroactively increase the conditions that you deal, that you have already dealt. And so you want to use the F2 after you've landed damage, not before you land damage, because you want to ensure you land the damage. It's better to do damage, even if it's less damage, than to attempt to do big damage and then do none. And you can also use the F4 for Alacrity, but I generally don't use this because there's so many skills to use and there's so much energy management required on this build. So you really are not able to use this unless, say, for example, you have 20 energy and you're going to swap legends anyways, then use the Alacrity anyways because it's instant cast and you can just get that for free. But you generally don't need reduced cooldowns, although it is kind of nice to get the lowered cooldowns on the spear skills because they're all about getting reduced cooldown, right? So yeah, or another time you could use Alacrity is if, say, you're kiting, and in the situation where you're kiting, you don't really need to use all those defensive or offensive skills. You only need to use offensive. So what you'll do is you'll use your 3 skill in the spear, and that's a evade and a leap. You can use your 3 skill in the mace, and that's a shorter leap as well. And you can use the leap in Mallyx stance, and that's kind of like our mobility there. And when those are the only 3 kind of like movement skills we have, we need to reduce their cooldown while we're kiting so that we can use them more often. And so I'll use the Alacrity then because we generally don't need to use all that energy up anyways. They can use the shield 4 and shield 5 as well. There's Aegis on the shield 4 and you can block with the 5 skill, but generally if you're being chased by, like, you know, an outnumbered situation, you're not going to want to use Crystal Hibernation because then they're just going to be able to catch up to you. So you really need the mobility here, and it's kind of lacking, so you got to keep moving. So yeah, those are pretty much the skills, other than the Mallyx stance, which everyone knows how this works already, but we'll just go over it real quick. The 3 skill, or the Call to Anguish skill, is a leap which pulls you in. So when you use that with the spear, you always want to use the spear 5 on yourself, because they're going to be pulled in towards you, and you can combo that pretty well. The Banish enchantment is nice for removing boons and adding chill, which also gives torment, but it is very costly. It's 30 energy, and so is Call to Anguish, and so is Pain Absorption, which is your stun break. So these are all very costly, so you got to use them very sparingly, and it doesn't really allow you to use much of your weapon skills while you're in Mallyx, so you can probably only use like one of them. You can also use Embrace the Darkness, which pulses torment around you, and this is kind of nice because it creates a dark field, and Abyssal Raise is a blast finisher, so it gives blindness, and you can keep repeating that and kind of like protect yourself while you're in melee range. And the Mace 3 is also a blast finisher, so it will blind with that. So generally, yeah, that'll be the highest damage you can do. But once again, it depends on who you're fighting against. If you're fighting against like another Celestial build, then you need to maximize your damage and get the Embrace the Darkness off. If you're fighting against a Willbender, well, you want to use Banish Enchantment to get rid of their boons, because they rely on boons to do damage and to survive. If you're going against a Thief, well, you want to use Pain Absorption to get the resistance, and you probably want to use Call to Anguish so that you can actually land something on them. So it just kind of depends on what you're fighting against. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So like if I were to use a full combo, it would kind of look like this. So I've got the Immobilize into this 5, 4, 5, 2, 5, and then swap, leap in. You can do 5 again maybe, and then use your Mace ability, swap to Mace, and get the extra Abyssal Blot on them. You see they've got 29 torment. I use the F2 to retroactively increase the damage there, and then it just does a ton of damage. And you can see that if you land these combos on someone, it just obliterates them. So against like players who play around you, it's going to feel a little bit more balanced, but yeah, in situations where someone doesn't have cooldowns, you can really finish them off very fast. So here's a 1v1 against a Celestial Harbinger. This is probably the most difficult 1v1 to fight, so it's a really good test of the build's potential. Obviously, as usual, the counter to fighting a Celestial Harbinger is to constantly run around them during the fight. So you want to be moving to where they cannot use their attacks, which require them to be facing you to attack. So right here, I'm not doing that too well. But now I'm starting to move around and make it a little bit more difficult for them to hit me with their just constant, stream of damage. And I land my heal, but they do a lot of damage with the spear, does a lot of lifesteal. And I do my Kalla burst here with all of my CCs, but they don't stand in that, so it peels for me a little bit. But now I have to use my shield block. I get feared, I give myself some Aegis, and I use the Mace combo and the F2 for some might. You need to optimize your damage in these tanky 1v1s, because it's not about like, oh, this build is unkillable. It's you need to optimize your damage better, because these two builds are some of the tankiest builds in the game right now, and these fights end. And that's because both of us are playing very aggressively. So if you're struggling to get kills on these builds, you either are playing a build with not enough damage, or you're playing it in a very like not aggressive way, or you're not optimizing your damage. So like in this situation, I want to be pressing the F2 a lot. I want to be always using the Razor's Claw Rage. And then as you can see, I land my CC combo and we're able to get the kill. So you really need to get those burst combos down and optimizing your damage by keeping up those damage modifiers from the F2, filling in the Mace 2 and F3 in between, and then you should be able to kill most things as long as they don't run from you. Now here's a roaming situation where I get jumped on by a Reaper and a Willbender, which is a lot of power damage to get jumped on by at the start. And for me to be able to win, I need to not get instantly bursted. So I want to be using the Pain Absorption early and the Kalla stance abilities early, because those give protection and resistance, which is going to prevent me from getting locked down or bursted down. And from there, I can use the shield 5 to prevent any kind of like burst, and that'll give me time to land my damage on them, and kite while using the spear to pressure them. So we get pain absorption here again, so I don't get immobilized or chilled, and then I counter pressure with my Kalla stance, and you can see the Reaper doesn't even want to get in that, but the Willbender goes in, they get hit by the Kalla stance, and I land a nice CC into the Spear 5, and the Reaper goes down too. So you can see the counter pressure is really nice while using the Spear, and just surviving long enough is important to being able to get out that ramping damage. But that is pretty much how you want to be playing the Spear Celestial Renegade in World vs. World. If you do like this content, then please like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.